Hi, I'm Natalie. 3 weeks ago, I was standing in the cereal aisle at Target with my sister's 4-year-old having a meltdown at my feet, her 7-year-old begging for sugar bombs I couldn't afford, and her 9-year-old asking why mommy never picks them up anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa with a single photo, a positive pregnancy test, and 3 words that made my blood run cold. Number 6, sis. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I stood there frozen, staring at that screen while Zoe screamed about wanting the cartoon character cereal, while Mason tugged my sleeve asking if we could get pizza for dinner, while Liam just looked at me with those tired eyes that no 9-year-old should have. And something inside me that had been bending for years finally snapped clean through. I didn't text back congratulations. I didn't text back at all. Instead, I paid for the groceries with money I'd planned to use for my own bills, loaded 3 kids who weren't mine into my car, and drove them back to the apartment where I'd been living more like a mother than an aunt for the past 5 years. That night, while tucking them into the beds I'd bought because Vanessa never seemed to have furniture that lasted, I made a decision that would tear my family apart. But here's what nobody tells you about being the responsible one. They don't warn you that your love will be used as a weapon against you. That every time you show up, you're actually teaching someone that they never have to. And they definitely don't tell you that the moment you finally say enough, you'll be the villain in everyone else's story. What would you have done? If you were drowning under the weight of someone else's choices, someone you loved, would you have kept swimming or finally let go? The morning Vanessa announced pregnancy number 6 started like most mornings in my life had started for the past half-decade. My alarm went off at 5:45, not because I'm a morning person, but because getting 3 kids ready for school when you're not their actual parent requires military precision and the patience of a saint I definitely wasn't. I dragged myself out of bed in my Pearl District apartment, the one I'd signed a lease on 3 years ago when I got promoted to senior marketing director at Cascade Creative Group. Back then, I'd imagined this place differently. I'd pictured lazy Sunday mornings with coffee and silence, maybe eventually with Marcus, my boyfriend who'd stuck around despite the chaos. I'd envisioned a home office where I could work late on campaigns without interruption, a living room that stayed clean for more than 6 hours, a kitchen where I cooked meals for myself instead of rotating through chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. Instead, my second bedroom looked like a small-scale daycare center. 3 twin mattresses crowded the floor because Vanessa's latest boyfriend Kevin had sold the bunk beds I'd bought 6 months ago for drug money, though the family didn't talk about that part. Toys I couldn't afford spilled from plastic bins. Backpacks hung on hooks I'd installed myself because teaching kids responsibility apparently fell to me too. The walls were decorated with crayon drawings and school artwork because even if this wasn't permanent, even if Vanessa swore every single time that she'd get it together soon, these kids deserved to feel like they had a home somewhere. I shuffled into the main room where Liam was already awake, sitting on the couch in the semi-darkness, staring at nothing. That's what worried me most about him. 9 years old and he'd already learned to be invisible, to not ask for things, to expect disappointment. He looked up when I entered, and something in his expression reminded me so much of myself at that age that my chest physically hurt. "Good morning, sweetheart." I kept my voice soft. "Did you sleep okay?" He shrugged. "Zoe kicked me a lot." I made a mental note to figure out the bed situation again. Maybe I could find another mattress, squeeze it in somehow, sacrifice more of my own space. The thought exhausted me before my day had even begun. The next 40 minutes were a blur of organized chaos. Waking Chloe, who was 7 and dramatic about everything, required negotiations worthy of a hostage situation. Zoe, the 3-year-old, refused to wear anything except her princess dress that was currently in the laundry. Mason, 5 years old and sweet as honey but wild as a hurricane, had already dumped an entire box of cereal on the floor by the time I got the coffee maker started. Ethan, the 18-month-old, was supposed to be at Vanessa's. She'd promised she'd keep him this week, sworn she was getting better at managing, insisted she just needed help with the older ones while she figured things out. But I knew how this story ended. By tonight, she'd have some excuse. Kevin needed the apartment for something. The baby was crying too much. She had a job interview she couldn't miss, though she never seemed to actually get any of these jobs. And I'd have all 5 of them again, sleeping on my floor, eating my food, needing my attention while I tried to maintain the career that was currently funding all of our lives. I got them dressed in clothes I'd bought from Target clearance racks. I packed lunches in superhero lunch boxes I'd found at Goodwill. I refereed an argument between Chloe and Mason about who got the last yogurt pouch. I wiped Zoe's tears when she finally accepted that the princess dress was dirty and she had to wear normal clothes like a regular person. I checked Liam's homework folder, signed a permission slip for a field trip I'd have to figure out how to pay for, and wrote a check to the school for his lunch account that I knew would bounce unless I transferred money from my nearly empty savings. By 7:30, we were in my car, a sedan I'd bought used 2 years ago that now smelled permanently of old French fries and childhood. The school run was a well-practiced route. Riverside Elementary, where Ms. Rodriguez, the school counselor, had started recognizing me at pickup more than she recognized Vanessa. Where the front office staff knew my number by heart. Where Liam's teacher had gently suggested I might want to attend the parent-teacher conference since I was the one actually parenting. I watched them walk into the building, Liam holding Zoe's hand because that's what he always did, Chloe skipping ahead because she was young enough to still find joy in small things, Mason stopping to examine a weird bug on the sidewalk because the world was still magical when you were 5. And I felt the familiar cocktail of love and resentment and guilt that had become my constant companion. They weren't my kids. I never signed up for this. But they also weren't to blame for any of it. I made it to Cascade Creative Group by 8:15, which meant I was late. Again. My boss, a normally understanding woman named Helen, had stopped being subtle about her concerns. I'd missed 3 major client meetings in the past month because of school emergencies. I'd turned in a campaign proposal 2 weeks late because Mason had gotten sick and I'd spent 4 nights sleeping in a chair next to his bed. My work, which used to be sharp and creative and award-winning, had become sloppy around the edges, distracted, just good enough. Denise caught me at my desk before I'd even set down my bag. She was my best friend at the company, had been since we both started as junior associates 6 years ago. She knew everything. She'd watched me slowly disappear under the weight of responsibilities that weren't mine. Rough morning? She handed me a coffee, the good kind from the place downtown that cost $7 and felt like a luxury I couldn't justify anymore. Just the usual circus. I took the coffee gratefully. Thanks for this. She sat on the edge of my desk, lowering her voice. Natalie, you look exhausted. Like actually exhausted. When's the last time you slept a full night? I couldn't remember. Honestly couldn't pinpoint the last time I'd gone to bed without setting multiple alarms, without listening for small voices in the night, without waking up to check if everyone was still breathing, still safe, still okay. I'm managing. You're drowning. Denise didn't soften it. And I say this because I love you, but something has to change. You can't keep doing this. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the desk. Vanessa. I felt my stomach drop before I even looked. The text was sitting there, impossible to ignore. The photo of the positive pregnancy test, the kind you buy at the dollar store because that's all you can afford when you're about to have your 6th child with your 3rd baby daddy. And those 3 words that made something in my brain simply shut down. Number 6, sis. I stared at it. Read it again. Tried to find some other interpretation, some way those words could mean anything except what they obviously meant. Denise leaned over, saw the screen, and said a word that perfectly captured the moment but that I won't repeat. She's pregnant again. It wasn't a question. Denise had been there for pregnancies 3, 4, and 5. She'd watched me rearrange my entire life each time, promising myself it would be temporary, that Vanessa would mature, that motherhood would eventually click for her the way it was supposed to. I need to go. I stood up, grabbing my bag, ignoring the half-dozen emails that needed responses. Natalie, you have the Patterson presentation in an hour. I know. I was already walking toward the door. I know, I need to handle this. The drive to Vanessa's apartment in East Portland took 25 minutes through late morning traffic. The complex was one of those places that looked optimistic in the brochure photos but depressing in reality. Peeling paint, broken playground equipment, cars in various states of disrepair scattered through the parking lot. Vanessa's unit was on the second floor, identifiable by the broken screen door that had been broken for 8 months. I didn't knock. I'd learned years ago that knocking just gave her time to prepare her excuses. I used the key she'd given me for emergencies, which was hilarious considering my entire relationship with her kids was one long emergency. The apartment smelled like cigarettes and old takeout. Kevin was passed out on the couch, a man in his 30s who dressed like he was 19 and acted like he was 12. Empty beer bottles decorated the coffee table. The TV was playing some talk show at a volume that should have woken the dead. Vanessa emerged from the bedroom, and I saw it immediately. The slight swell of her belly that I'd been too busy to notice before. She was probably 3 or 4 months along already. Far enough that this wasn't a conversation about options. This was a conversation about reality. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She saw my face and had the decency to look slightly guilty. At least she used to look guilty. Now she mostly looked defensive. Before you start, she began, which was always how she started. 6 kids, Vanessa. I kept my voice low, controlled. You're going to have 6 children. I know how to count. She moved into the tiny kitchen, putting physical distance between us like that would help. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you can barely manage the 5 you already have. That's not fair. Fair? I felt something crack in my voice. You know what's not fair? That Liam asked me last week why his mom doesn't love him. That Chloe told her teacher I'm her mom now because you haven't shown up to a single school event in 2 years. That Mason doesn't even remember living with you. That Zoe thinks this is normal, that mommies are just people who show up sometimes with broken promises. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, and once upon a time, those tears would have worked on me. They'd been her most effective weapon since we were kids. Cry, make me feel guilty for being mean, reset the cycle. But I'd watched her cry through 5 pregnancies, through countless promises to do better, through every single boundary I'd ever tried to set. I'm trying, Natalie. Her voice shook. I'm really trying this time. You're pregnant again. With a man who sold your kids furniture for drugs. In an apartment you can barely afford. While I'm raising your other 5 children. What part of that is trying? Kevin is getting help. He's going to get a job and we're going to move somewhere better and this baby is going to be different because we're different now. I'd heard these words before. Different names, different apartments, same script. After Liam, it was Dylan who was going to step up. After Chloe, Dylan again, second verse same as the first. After Mason, it was Trevor who had a job lined up, who was going to be responsible, who loved her for real this time. After Zoe, still Trevor, just give him another chance. After Ethan, Kevin entered the picture with all the same promises wrapped in a shinier package. Where's Ethan? I looked around the apartment, suddenly realizing the 18-month-old wasn't visible. Vanessa's hesitation told me everything. He's at Mom's. You told me you were keeping him this week. You swore you had it handled. I do have it handled. I just needed 1 day to rest. I haven't been feeling well. Because you're pregnant. Again. The conversation spiraled exactly the way these conversations always spiraled. Her making excuses, me pointing out reality, her crying, me feeling guilty, both of us ending up right where we started. Except this time, I felt something different underneath the frustration. A coldness. A clarity. A sense that I'd reached the edge of something and the only options left were jump or turn back. I'm not doing this again. The words came out quieter than I expected. Vanessa looked up, mascara running down her cheeks. What? I'm not raising another baby for you. I'm barely surviving with the 5 I've got. You don't have 5. I have 5. They're my kids. Really? When's the last time you put Liam to bed? When's the last time you helped Chloe with homework? Do you even know what grade Mason is in? Silence. Heavy and damning. You're their aunt, Vanessa said finally. Family helps family. There it was. The line that had been used against me for 5 years. Family helps family. As if helping meant completely sacrificing my own life. As if there was no limit to what I owed simply because we shared DNA. As if my life, my career, my relationship, my mental health, my future didn't matter as much as her refusal to use birth control. I help. I've been helping. I've put my entire life on hold to help. But Vanessa, you're not asking for help anymore. You're expecting me to be their mother while you keep making choices that create more children you can't care for. So what are you saying? Her voice turned sharp. You're just going to abandon them? The word abandon hit exactly where she aimed it. That was the thing about family. They knew your weaknesses. They knew which buttons to push. Vanessa had watched me my entire life trying to be the good daughter, the responsible one, the person who fixed things. She knew I couldn't walk away from children. She'd been counting on it. I'm saying I need you to figure this out. I kept my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. I'm saying I can't do this anymore. I left before she could respond, before the tears could work, before I could talk myself back into the cage I'd been living in. On the drive back to work, my phone rang 4 times. Vanessa. Then my mother, Patricia. Then Uncle Gerald. The family grapevine worked faster than wildfire. I ignored all of them and went back to the office where I had a presentation to give, a career to salvage, and a life that was supposed to be mine. The Patterson presentation was a disaster. I stumbled through slides I prepared weeks ago but hadn't reviewed since Mason's stomach flu. I mixed up statistics. I forgot key talking points. Helen watched from the back of the room with an expression that managed to be both sympathetic and disappointed, which somehow felt worse than just disappointed. Afterward, she asked me to stay back. The room cleared, leaving just the 2 of us and the elephant that had been growing larger for months. Natalie, we need to talk about your performance. I know. I sat down heavily. I know it's been rough lately. Rough is an understatement. Helen's voice was kind but firm. You're one of our most talented directors. The campaign you led last year won us 3 industry awards. But this year, you've been somewhere else entirely. I need to know if you're still committed to being here. The question hit harder than it should have. Was I committed? Could I be committed to anything when I was splitting myself into pieces every single day, trying to be enough for everyone and failing spectacularly at all of it? I have some family stuff going on. It's temporary. You said that 6 months ago. Helen leaned forward. I'm not unsympathetic. I know you're dealing with a lot. But I have a company to run, and I need to know if you can handle the responsibilities of your position. The unspoken question hung there. Shape up or step down. I didn't blame her. If I was in her position, I'd be having this same conversation. I can handle it. The lie felt bitter on my tongue. I just need a little more time. Helen nodded, but I could see the doubt. Take the rest of the day. Go home, think about what you need, and we'll talk tomorrow about a realistic path forward. I gathered my things and left, feeling like I was failing at yet another thing. In the parking garage, sitting in my car that smelled like children and defeat, I finally let myself cry. Not the pretty kind of crying you see in movies. The ugly kind. The kind where you can't catch your breath and your chest hurts and you're not entirely sure you can stop. My phone buzzed. Marcus. I'd forgotten we had plans for dinner. Our first real date night in 3 months because I'd finally managed to coordinate with my mom to watch the kids for one evening. Hey babe, still on for tonight? Really looking forward to actually having you to myself for once. The message was sweet. Understanding. Marcus had been so patient. He'd stuck around through the chaos when most men would have run. He'd helped with bedtime routines and made pancakes on Saturday mornings and never once complained about the fact that our relationship came with 5 small chaperones. But I'd seen the cracks forming. The conversations about our future that never went anywhere, because how could we plan a future when I was busy surviving someone else's present? The way he'd stopped asking me to move in with him because we both knew I couldn't. The careful distance he'd started keeping, like he was protecting himself from the inevitable. I stared at the message, then at the time. 4:30 in the afternoon. School pickup was in an hour. I had to get Liam, Chloe, Mason, and Zoe. Take them home. Make dinner. Help with homework. Do baths. Read stories. Wait for Vanessa to call with whatever excuse she had for not taking them tonight. Put them to bed in my apartment that was supposed to be mine. Then maybe, if I had any energy left, be present for Marcus. Or I could call my mother. Ask her to keep Ethan overnight and pick up the other kids. Explain that I desperately needed one evening to hold on to the last threads of my adult life. And listen to her sigh, that special sigh that communicated disappointment wrapped in martyrdom, the one that said I was being selfish, that family sacrifices for family, that she'd raised 2 daughters and somehow managed without complaining this much. I typed out a response to Marcus. Can we rain check? Something came up with the kids. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, sure. No worries. 2 words that held a universe of disappointment. I dropped my phone in the cup holder and drove toward Riverside Elementary, where 3 kids who called me auntie but needed me like a mother would be waiting. Where I'd smile and ask about their days and pack them into my car and continue the cycle that was slowly killing me. Because that's what good aunts do. What responsible sisters do. What family does. The real breaking point came 3 days later, on a Saturday morning that should have been peaceful. I woke up to Zoe jumping on my bed, her 3-year-old voice at maximum volume. Auntie Nat, wake up. Liam is bleeding. I bolted upright, instantly in crisis mode. Where? His nose. There's blood everywhere. I ran to the kids' room where Liam sat on his mattress, head tilted back, blood streaming from his nose. Not a little nosebleed. A serious one. Mason was crying in the corner, scared. Chloe stood frozen, eyes wide. It's okay, baby. I grabbed a towel, applied pressure. Does it hurt? Did you hit it? He shook his head, couldn't speak around the blood and the towel. My mind raced through possibilities. Dry air. Allergies. Or something worse. He'd been looking pale lately, more tired than usual. I'd meant to take him to a doctor but kept putting it off because I couldn't afford the copay and Vanessa's insurance coverage was spotty at best. 20 minutes later, the bleeding stopped but my anxiety hadn't. I cleaned him up, got everyone breakfast, and made a decision I'd been avoiding. I called my mother. Patricia Harper answered on the 3rd ring, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she knew I was calling to ask for something. Natalie. How are the children? They're fine. Mostly. Liam had a bad nosebleed this morning and I think I need to take him to urgent care. On a Saturday? Isn't that expensive? Mom, he had blood streaming down his face for 20 minutes. She sighed. Children get nosebleeds. You always were so dramatic about medical things. I counted to 5 in my head. Can you watch the other kids while I take him? Another sigh. I suppose. Though I did have plans today. I need to make sure he's okay. Fine. Bring them by. But Natalie, we need to talk about this situation. I've been hearing things from Vanessa. Of course she had. I'm sure you have. She says you're being very cold about her news. That you won't even congratulate her. She's pregnant with her 6th child, Mom. She can't take care of the 5 she has. That's not for you to judge. Patricia's voice sharpened. She's your sister. She needs support right now, not criticism. I'm the one who needs support. I wanted to scream it. I'm the one raising her kids while she makes more. But I swallowed it down like I always did. I dropped the other 4 kids at my mother's house in Beaverton, a tidy suburban home where Patricia still lived alone since Dad died 3 years ago. She greeted the children with the warmth she'd never quite managed with me, all smiles and offers of cookies. The kids ran inside, happy to be with Grandma who let them watch unlimited TV and eat sugar. Before I could leave, Patricia pulled me aside. "You're being very hard on your sister." "I'm being realistic. You don't understand what it's like for her. She struggles with things that came easily to you. That wasn't my fault. It never had been. I didn't make Vanessa drop out of college. I didn't force her to date men who couldn't hold jobs. I didn't convince her that birth control was optional. But somehow, her struggles had become my responsibility. I have to go. Liam's waiting in the car." The urgent care visit took 4 hours. 4 hours of waiting rooms and paperwork and a doctor who wanted to run tests because repeated heavy nosebleeds in a 9-year-old weren't normal. 4 hours of me sitting in a plastic chair, watching Liam try to be brave while nurses stuck him with needles, and feeling the weight of every single choice that had led to this moment. He wasn't even my child. But I was the one here. I was the one holding his hand while they drew blood. I was the one Googling symptoms on my phone and trying not to panic. I was the one who would figure out how to pay for this because Vanessa's insurance, if it was even active, certainly wasn't covering it. The doctor, a tired-looking woman in her 50s named Dr. Chen, finally came back with results. Most likely just severe allergies combined with dry indoor air. "We'll start him on a medication and see if that helps. But I'd like to see him back in 2 weeks for a follow-up, and if the nosebleeds continue, we should see a pediatric specialist." She handed me prescriptions and discharge paperwork. Then she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Are you his primary guardian?" "I'm his aunt. His mother has primary custody." "And where is she today?" The question was gentle but pointed. I felt my face flush. "She's unavailable." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "I see. Well, someone needs to monitor him closely. Make sure he takes his medication. Keep the air humidified. Bring him back if symptoms worsen." "I will." Because of course I would. Because that's what I did. By the time we left urgent care, it was almost dinner time. Liam sat quietly in the passenger seat, a prescription slip folded in his small hands, staring out the window at the gray Portland drizzle that had started falling. He looked so much older than 9. So much more tired than any child should be. "I'm sorry, Auntie Nat." The words caught me off guard. "Sorry for what, sweetheart?" "For being trouble. For making you miss your day." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Oh baby, no. You're not trouble. You're never trouble. But I heard you on the phone with Grandma. She said you always have to take care of us instead of doing your own stuff." So he'd heard that. Of course he'd heard that. Kids always heard the things you desperately hoped they wouldn't. I pulled into a parking lot, put the car in park, and turned to face him properly. "Liam, look at me." I waited until his eyes met mine. "None of this is your fault. Not one single bit. You understand me?" He nodded, but I could see he didn't believe it. How could he? He was 9 years old and already fluent in reading adult stress, in measuring his own worth by how much burden he created, in making himself smaller so that maybe he'd be less of a problem. We sat there in the gathering dusk, rain pattering against the windshield, and I realized this was the cost nobody talked about. Not just my exhaustion or my failing career or my crumbling relationship. The real cost was what this chaos was doing to these kids. They were learning that love was conditional. That they were too much. That their very existence was an inconvenience to be managed. I took him to get ice cream, even though I couldn't afford it, even though it was almost dinner time, even though 4 other kids were waiting at my mother's house. We sat in the parking lot of the ice cream place, eating our cones in my car, and I let him just be a kid for 20 minutes. Let him tell me about a book he was reading at school. Let him talk about how his friend Julian had a new video game. Let him exist without apology. When we finally got back to my mother's house to collect the others, Patricia met me at the door with a manila folder. Her expression told me this wasn't going to be good. "What's this?" "Something Vanessa asked me to give you. She wanted me to be here when you looked at it." My stomach dropped. I opened the folder. Inside were printed articles about grandparents' rights, about familial obligations, and a handwritten letter from Vanessa that made my blood run cold as I read it. The letter accused me of trying to alienate her from her children. It claimed I'd been poisoning them against her, telling them lies, using my money to buy their affection. It threatened legal action if I didn't stop interfering in her parenting. And at the bottom, underlined 3 times, was a sentence that felt like a knife between my ribs. "If you really cared about these kids, you'd support their mother instead of judging her." I looked up at my mother, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "You knew what was in this?" She asked me to look it over before giving it to you. Patricia crossed her arms. "Natalie, you have to understand how this looks from her perspective. You've taken over. You make all the decisions. You don't consult her. The children barely see her anymore. Because she doesn't show up." I kept my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. "I don't keep her away. She chooses not to come. Maybe she feels unwelcome. Maybe you've made it clear you think you're better at this than she is." "I am better at this than she is." The words came out sharper than I intended. "I'm the one who makes sure they eat. I'm the one who gets them to school. I'm the one sitting in urgent care while she's doing God knows what with Kevin. That's exactly the attitude I'm talking about." Patricia's voice rose. "That's superiority. That judgment. She's your sister, Natalie. She's struggling, and instead of helping her, you're taking over her life. I'm helping her kids survive her choices. They're not your kids." The words hung there between us, heavy and final. My mother had said them before, but never quite like this. Never with this much emphasis on the your, like I'd stolen something that didn't belong to me. "Then who's taking care of them?" I held up the folder. "While she's writing letters about her rights, who's making sure Liam takes his new medication? Who's checking Chloe's homework? Who's teaching Mason to tie his shoes because nobody else has time? Who's getting up at 5:45 every morning to do the job she won't do? That's your choice. Nobody asked you to do all that." The statement was so absurd I actually laughed, a bitter sound that didn't contain any humor. "Nobody asked me?" "Mom, Vanessa drops them at my apartment and disappears for days. What am I supposed to do, leave them on the street?" "You could say no. You could tell her she needs to handle her own responsibilities." "I've tried. Every single time, I've tried. And every single time, you and Uncle Gerald and Aunt Lorraine tell me I'm being cruel, that family helps family, that I should be more understanding." Patricia's face flushed. "Because you should be. You've always had everything easy. Good grades, good job, good life. Vanessa struggles more. She needs more support. So my punishment for being responsible is to sacrifice everything for someone who refuses to be? It's not a punishment. It's family." There it was again. That word weaponized against me. Family. As if sharing DNA meant I owed an infinite debt. As if there was no limit to what could be asked of me simply because we'd grown up in the same house. The kids were watching from the living room doorway now. All 4 of them, silent witnesses to another adult argument about their existence. I saw Liam's face and felt something inside me harden into resolve. I need to take them home. I gathered my things, ignoring my mother's continued protests. "Come on, kids. Let's go. Natalie Harper, don't you walk away from me." But I did. I loaded 4 tired children into my car and drove back to my apartment where somehow I had to find the energy to make dinner and do homework and pretend everything was fine. That night, after the kids were finally asleep, I sat on my bathroom floor and called the one person I knew would tell me the truth without coding it in family obligation. Denise answered on the second ring. I need help. My voice cracked on the words. I don't know what to do anymore. She listened while I told her everything. The pregnancy announcement. The letter. My mother's accusations. The urgent care visit. The way I was drowning and somehow still being told I wasn't doing enough. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Denise said something that changed everything. Nat, do you know what enablement is? I thought I did, but I let her explain. It's when you care about someone so much that you protect them from the consequences of their choices. You love them so much that you make it possible for them to keep making terrible decisions because you're always there to catch them when they fall. I'm not enabling her. I'm helping the kids. By raising them so she doesn't have to. By making it so she never actually has to step up and be a parent because you'll always be there to do it for her. Nat, every time you take those kids, every time you pay for something she should pay for, every time you rearrange your life around her chaos, you're sending her a message. The message is that her choices don't have consequences because you'll always fix it. But the kids will suffer if I stop. They're already suffering. Denise's voice was gentle but firm. They're growing up thinking this is normal. That mothers don't have to show up. That love means sacrificing yourself completely for people who won't do the same for you. What are you teaching them? The question hit me like cold water. What was I teaching them? Liam, who already apologized for existing. Chloe, who told her teacher I was her mom because the real one was too busy. Mason, who barely remembered living with Vanessa. Zoe, who thought aunts were just mothers who lived somewhere else. I don't know how to stop. If I stop, where do they go? That's the question Vanessa should be asking herself. Not you. After I hung up with Denise, I sat in the dark of my living room, listening to the sounds of children sleeping in the next room. 4 kids, about to be 6. 6 children who needed stability and love and consistency. 6 children who deserved a mother who showed up. And I realized something that should have been obvious all along. I couldn't save Vanessa from herself. I'd been trying for 5 years, and all I'd accomplished was enabling her to keep making the same choices while I slowly lost myself in the process. The next morning, I called Dr. Christine Aldridge, a therapist whose card I'd been carrying in my wallet for 6 months. I'd picked it up at a community health fair, kept telling myself I'd make an appointment someday when things calmed down. As if things were ever going to calm down on their own. Her office was in a professional building on Burnside Street, decorated in soothing blues and grays. She was a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and a direct manner that I appreciated immediately. No coddling. No false sympathy. Just honest assessment. Tell me what brought you here today. I told her everything. Not the sanitized version I gave my family, but the truth. How I'd been raising my sister's kids for years. How I was failing at my job. How my relationship was crumbling. How I just found out there would be a 6th child. How everyone kept telling me I should do more, be more understanding, sacrifice more. And how do you feel about all of this? Angry. The word came out before I could stop it. I'm so angry all the time, and then I feel guilty for being angry because it's not the kid's fault, and then I'm angry at myself for feeling guilty, and it just cycles endlessly. Dr. Aldridge nodded like this made perfect sense. What would happen if you said no? To what? To all of it. To taking the kids. To being available whenever your sister needs you. To putting your life on hold. What would happen? I don't know. I'd never seriously considered it. The kids would end up in foster care, probably. Or with my mom, who's too old to handle 5 children. Or back with Vanessa full-time, which terrifies me because I don't trust her to keep them safe. So you're afraid that if you don't sacrifice yourself, something terrible will happen to them. Yes. And that fear keeps you trapped in a situation that's destroying you. I felt tears burning in my eyes. I love them. They're not just abstract kids. They're Liam and Chloe and Mason and Zoe and Ethan. I know their favorite colors and their nightmares and the way they like their sandwiches cut. How do I just walk away from that? I'm not suggesting you walk away. Dr. Aldridge leaned forward slightly. I'm suggesting you set boundaries. There's a difference between helping and taking over. Between supporting your sister and enabling her. Between loving those children and sacrificing your entire existence for them. She gave me homework. Actual homework, like I was back in school. She wanted me to write down every single thing I did for Vanessa's kids in 1 week. Every task, every expense, every moment of time. Then she wanted me to write down what Vanessa did in that same week. The exercise was brutal. By the end of the week, my list filled 3 pages. Vanessa's list had 4 items, and 2 of them were phone calls to ask me to keep the kids longer. When I showed Dr. Aldridge the lists, she asked a simple question. If Vanessa is their mother and you're their aunt, why does your list look like the mother's and hers look like a distant relative's? Because she won't step up. Can't or won't? I'd never really thought about the difference. Won't. She could if she wanted to. She just doesn't want to deal with the hard parts. So what you're doing is making it possible for her to be a mother in name only. You're doing all the work while she keeps the title. And every time she gets pregnant again, she's making a choice knowing that you'll handle the consequences. The words settled over me like a heavy blanket. True but suffocating. Over the next few sessions, Dr. Aldridge helped me see patterns I'd been blind to. How my mother had always excused Vanessa's behavior while holding me to impossible standards. How I'd learned early that love meant sacrifice, that being good meant being selfless to the point of self-destruction. How I'd been playing a role assigned to me in childhood and never questioned whether I wanted to keep playing it. She also helped me see what this was costing. Not just the obvious things like my career and my relationship. But deeper costs. My sense of self. My ability to have needs. My understanding of what healthy love looked like. In our 4th session, she asked me something that stopped me cold. If these were a stranger's kids, would you be doing all of this? No. Of course not. Why not? Because it wouldn't be my responsibility. So why is it your responsibility just because you shared DNA with their mother? I didn't have an answer. Or rather, I had the answer I'd been given my whole life. Family helps family, but it suddenly sounded hollow. The breaking point came during a session in late November. Dr. Aldridge asked me to do a visualization exercise. Close my eyes and imagine my life 5 years from now if nothing changed. I closed my eyes and saw myself at 37. Still in my apartment, now with 6 kids sleeping on mattresses on the floor. Still working a job I was mediocre at because I had nothing left to give it. Marcus gone, finally worn down by competing for scraps of my attention. My mother still calling with guilt trips. Vanessa still making choices knowing I'd handle them. And pregnancy number 7 on the horizon. I opened my eyes and found my face wet with tears I hadn't felt forming. What did you see? Dr. Aldridge asked gently. My life completely gone. Vanessa still doing whatever she wants. And me, just existing to clean up her messes until I'm too old to do it anymore. Is that the life you want? No. Then something has to change. She handed me a tissue. Natalie, you can't control what Vanessa does. You can't make her be a better mother. You can't force her to make better choices. The only thing you can control is your own response to her choices. That week, I made a decision. Not impulsively. Not in anger. But with the cold clarity that comes from finally seeing the truth. I needed to stop enabling my sister. I needed to set boundaries. Real ones. The kind that would hold even when she cried, even when my mother guilt-tripped me, even when I felt like the worst person in the world. I started by talking to Marcus. We met for coffee at a quiet place near my apartment, and I could see the wariness in his eyes. He was bracing for bad news. For another cancellation. For another conversation where I chose everyone else over him. I need to tell you something. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. I'm going to make some changes. Big ones. And I don't know how it's going to go, but I need you to know I'm trying. He listened while I explained my plan. How I was going to tell Vanessa she needed to parent her own kids. How I was going to stop being available at all hours. How I was going to reclaim my life. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. I've been waiting 2 years for you to say something like this. You're not mad? Mad? Nat, I've been watching you disappear. Watching you give everything to people who just take and never give anything back. I've been terrified I was going to lose you completely. So no, I'm not mad. I'm relieved. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked, for the first time in months. About what we wanted. About whether we had a future. About what boundaries I needed to set and how he could support me. It felt like coming up for air after being underwater so long I'd forgotten what breathing felt like. That night, I called a family meeting. Not at my place. At my mother's house, neutral territory. Vanessa, Patricia, Uncle Gerald, and Aunt Lorraine all showed up, curiosity mixed with irritation on their faces. I stood in my mother's living room, hands shaking but voice steady, and said the words I should have said years ago. I'm done raising Vanessa's kids. Starting now, she needs to be their primary caregiver. I'll help occasionally, like an aunt should, but I'm not going to be their substitute mother anymore. The room exploded. Vanessa started crying immediately. My mother launched into a speech about family obligations. Uncle Gerald called me selfish. Aunt Lorraine tried to mediate but really just wanted everyone to get along, which meant I should back down. I let them talk. Let them say all the things I knew they'd say. Then I pulled out the lists Dr. Aldridge had me make. This is what I do for your kids every week, Vanessa. I read through the highlights. Wake them up, feed them, dress them, take them to school, pick them up, help with homework, make dinner, do baths, put them to bed. Pay for their food, their clothes, their school supplies, their medical care. Everything. I set down my list and picked up hers. This is what you do. Call once or twice. Maybe visit for an hour. Promise to do better. Get pregnant again. The silence was heavy. Vanessa's tears had stopped. She was staring at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. I love those kids. I kept my voice level. I love them so much it physically hurts. But I'm not their mother. You are. And every single day that I do your job, I'm teaching them that mothers don't have to show up. That they're not worth showing up for. You're punishing me for being pregnant. Vanessa's voice was small. I'm stopping the pattern of enabling you to make choices without consequences. There's a difference. My mother tried to intervene. Natalie, you're being unreasonable. Those children need stability. They do. They need stability from their mother. Not from an aunt who's drowning. So what are you saying? Uncle Gerald demanded. You're just going to dump them back on Vanessa overnight? No. I'd prepared for this. I'm saying I need a plan. A real one. With Vanessa stepping up gradually but actually stepping up. With clear expectations and consequences. With you all supporting her actually parenting instead of supporting me doing it for her. I laid out my proposal. Vanessa would start taking the kids every weekend. Not leaving them with Kevin or our mother or me, but actually being present and parenting. During the week, she'd be responsible for at least 2 pickups and 2 bedtimes. She'd attend school meetings. She'd handle medical appointments. She'd pay for their expenses using the child support she was supposed to be receiving. And if she didn't follow through, I was done. Completely done. If she chose not to parent, then we'd need to talk about legal custody arrangements because I wasn't going to keep playing pretend. The room erupted again. But this time, I didn't stay to argue. I'd said what I needed to say. The rest was up to them. As I walked out to my car, Aunt Lorraine caught up with me. She was the only one who hadn't yelled. You know they're going to make you feel like the villain in this story. I know. Are you prepared for that? I looked back at the house where I could hear raised voices through the windows. My whole life, I'd been trying to be the hero. The one who fixed things. The one who sacrificed. Maybe it was time to be the villain if that's what it took to survive. I have to be. That night, alone in my apartment for the first time in recent memory, all 5 kids having stayed with Vanessa because I'd insisted, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Space. Silence. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, I could have a life that belonged to me. The silence lasted exactly 18 hours. Then Vanessa showed up at my apartment at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, pounding on the door hard enough to wake the neighbors. I'd been asleep for maybe an hour, the first decent sleep I'd gotten in weeks, and the sound jolted me awake with my heart racing. I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there, mascara streaked down her face, looking like she'd been crying for hours. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Pretend I wasn't home. Let her stand out there and figure out her own problems for once. But old habits die hard, and the responsible sister in me couldn't just leave her in the hallway. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. What do you want, Vanessa? They took them. Her voice was ragged, desperate. Child Protective Services came to the apartment this afternoon. Someone called them. They took all 5 of my babies, Natalie. They're gone. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? She pushed past me into the apartment, and I could smell the cigarette smoke clinging to her clothes, see the way her hands were shaking. A social worker showed up with police. They said they had reports of neglect. They said the apartment was unsafe. They just took them. They wouldn't even let me pack their things properly. I closed the door, my mind racing. Who called CPS? I don't know. She collapsed onto my couch. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe the school. Maybe you. The accusation hung there between us. I didn't call them. But you thought about it, didn't you? She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. After your little speech at Mom's house, after you washed your hands of us, you thought about calling and reporting me. The terrible thing was, she was partially right. I had thought about it. During one of my sessions with Dr. Aldridge, we discussed whether the children were safe with Vanessa. Whether my constant intervention was actually preventing necessary interventions from happening. Whether by always catching them when they fell, I was stopping anyone else from noticing they were falling at all. But I hadn't made the call. I'd decided to try boundaries first. To give Vanessa a chance to step up before taking more drastic action. Where are they now? I kept my voice neutral. Foster care. Emergency placement. They wouldn't tell me where. They said I'd get a hearing in 72 hours, but until then, I can't see them. I can't even talk to them. Natalie, Liam must be so scared. And Zoe, she's only 3. She won't understand why Mommy isn't there. Hearing her call herself Mommy after years of me doing all the actual mothering sparked something hot in my chest. Now you care about Liam being scared? Now you're worried about Zoe not understanding? Where was this concern last week when you dropped them off at my place and disappeared for 4 days? I know I've made mistakes. Vanessa's voice cracked. I know I'm not perfect. But they're my kids. They need to be with their mother. They need to be with someone who actually takes care of them. The words came out harsher than I intended, but I was too tired to soften them. Someone who feeds them real meals and makes sure they do their homework and shows up to their school events. Someone who doesn't keep bringing more kids into the world when she can't handle the ones she has. So you did call them. You reported me. I didn't. But maybe whoever did was right to do it. The look she gave me was pure betrayal, as if I'd physically struck her. How can you say that? How can you be okay with strangers taking my children? Because at least strangers will have to actually take care of them. At least in foster care, someone is legally obligated to make sure they're fed and safe and not just pawns in your cycle of chaos. Vanessa stood up abruptly. I came here because I thought you'd help me get them back. I thought you loved them. I do love them. That's exactly why I'm not helping you get them back until you prove you can actually be their mother. She stared at me like I'd become someone she didn't recognize. Maybe I had. Maybe the old Natalie, the one who always fixed everything, who always sacrificed herself, had finally broken enough to let someone new emerge. You're just like everyone else. Vanessa's voice turned cold. You think you're better than me. You've always thought you were better. I don't think I'm better. I think I'm tired. And I think those kids deserve more than what you've been giving them. She left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I stood in my empty apartment, hands shaking, wondering if I'd just made everything worse or finally done the right thing. The next morning, I got a call from a woman named Case Worker Barnes. She was professional, efficient, and clearly exhausted in the way that people who work in broken systems always are. Ms. Harper, I'm calling regarding your nieces and nephews. I understand you've been significantly involved in their care. I have been. For years. We'd like to speak with you about placement options. Given your existing relationship with the children and your apparent stability, we're wondering if you'd be willing to consider becoming their foster parent while we work through this case. My first instinct was to say yes immediately. To take them back, make sure they were safe, protect them from the system. But then I heard Dr. Aldridge's voice in my head. Every time you rescue them from the consequences of your sister's choices, you make it possible for her to keep making those choices. I need to think about it. The words felt like betrayal even as I said them. I understand this is a big decision. We'll need an answer within 48 hours. In the meantime, the children are safe. They're together in a home that's equipped to handle all 5 of them, which is rare. The foster parents are experienced and kind. Can I see them? Not until we've completed our initial investigation and you've been formally approved for visitation. If you decide to pursue foster placement, that process will expedite things. After I hung up, I called Dr. Aldridge's emergency line. She called me back within 20 minutes. They want me to foster them. I was pacing my apartment. They want me to become their legal guardian while they investigate Vanessa. And what do you want? I want them to be safe. I want them to be loved. I want them to have stability. That's not what I asked. What do you want for your life, Natalie? The question stopped me mid-pace. I don't know anymore. I've spent so long being what everyone else needed that I don't even know what I want. Then maybe that's what you need to figure out before you make this decision. Dr. Aldridge's voice was gentle but firm. Because if you take them now, you're not just helping temporarily. You're potentially signing up to raise 5 children who aren't yours. You're giving Vanessa another safety net that allows her to avoid consequences. And you're making a choice that will define the rest of your life. But if I don't take them, they stay in foster care with strangers. They stay in foster care with trained professionals who are paid to do this job. Who have support systems and resources. Who aren't emotionally entangled in the family dysfunction. Natalie, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let the system work. I spent the next 2 days in agony. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Liam's face when he'd apologized for being trouble. Chloe asking why I wasn't coming to get them. Mason calling for me in the night. Zoe crying for her auntie. Ethan reaching for me with those tiny hands. Marcus came over on the second night and found me sitting on the floor of my empty apartment, surrounded by drawings the kids had made that I'd kept tacked to my refrigerator. Talk to me. He sat down beside me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that if I don't take them, I'm abandoning them. And if I do take them, I'm abandoning myself. He picked up one of Liam's drawings, a crayon picture of our family with me in the center, labeled Aunt Nat in his careful 9-year-old handwriting. Can I ask you something? I nodded. If these were my sister's kids, and I'd been doing what you've been doing for the past 5 years, what would you tell me to do? I thought about it honestly. I'd tell you that you can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. That love without boundaries isn't love, it's codependency. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do is force people to face reality. So why is it different when it's you? Because they're kids. They didn't ask for any of this. Neither did you. Marcus took my hand. Nat, I love you. I've loved you through all of this chaos. But I need you to hear something, and I need you to really listen. I met his eyes. If you take those kids right now, we're done. Not because I don't understand. Not because I don't care about them. But because I've watched you disappear for 5 years, and I can't watch you do it for 18 more. I can't build a life with someone who's given their entire life away to fix a problem that isn't theirs to fix. The words should have made me angry. Instead, they felt like permission. Permission to choose myself. Permission to say no. Permission to believe that I mattered too. I called caseworker Barnes the next morning. My hands were steady this time. I can't take them. My voice didn't shake. I love them, but I can't be their foster parent. I need you to keep them where they are and work with their mother to either reunify them or find a permanent solution that doesn't involve me being their primary caregiver. Miss Harper, I want to make sure you understand. If you don't take them, there's no guarantee they'll all stay together. We'll try, but 5 children is difficult to place as a unit. I understand. And I'm sorry, but my answer is still no. There was a long pause. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Not for them necessarily, but for you. And sometimes that has to be enough. The guilt was crushing. I called my mother to tell her my decision, and the conversation went exactly as I expected. You're really going to let them stay with strangers? Patricia's voice was sharp with judgment. Your own nieces and nephews? I'm going to let the professionals handle a situation that I'm not equipped to handle. There's a difference. You're equipped. You've been doing it for years. No, Mom. I've been drowning for years. And every time I drown a little more, Vanessa learns she doesn't have to swim. This is about punishing your sister. This is about saving myself. I kept my voice calm even though I wanted to scream. I'm 32 years old. I have no savings. My relationship is falling apart. My career is in shambles. My mental health is destroyed. All because I kept trying to fix a problem that wasn't mine to fix. Those children are family. And I'm family too. Doesn't my life matter at all? The question hung there. My mother didn't answer it. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. I also called Uncle Gerald and Aunt Lorraine, explained my decision, endured their disappointment and lectures about family obligations. Uncle Gerald told me I was selfish. Aunt Lorraine cried and said she'd expected better from me. Neither of them offered to take the kids themselves, I noticed. It was easy to judge my choices when they weren't the ones being asked to sacrifice everything. The hardest call was to the school. Ms. Rodriguez, the counselor who'd watched this situation unfold over years, asked to meet me in person. We sat in her small office decorated with inspirational posters about growth and resilience, and she listened while I explained everything. How are the kids doing? I needed to know. Are they okay? They're adjusting. The foster family called to get school records, and from what I understand, they're being well cared for. Liam is struggling the most, but that's to be expected. He's been the parentified child for so long that he doesn't know how to just be a kid. The term parentified child hit me hard. That's what I'd been, too. The one who took care of everyone else. The one who grew up too fast because someone had to be the adult. Did I do the wrong thing? My voice cracked. By helping all these years, by taking them whenever Vanessa needed me, did I make everything worse? Ms. Rodriguez considered the question carefully. You did what you thought was right with the information and resources you had. But Natalie, there's a reason we have systems in place. There's a reason CPS exists. Sometimes family love isn't enough. Sometimes it takes professional intervention to break cycles. She showed me a chart she'd been keeping, something I hadn't known about. Attendance records for all 5 kids over the past 3 years. Before I'd started taking them regularly, the attendance was sporadic at best. Frequent absences, tardiness, notes about dirty clothes and empty lunch boxes. After I'd gotten involved, attendance improved dramatically. They came to school clean, fed, prepared. You saved them in a lot of ways. Ms. Rodriguez pointed to the improvement. But you also made it possible for their mother to continue neglecting them without facing consequences. The school was about to file a report 2 years ago. Then suddenly everything improved because you stepped in, and we didn't have evidence anymore. So I prevented them from getting the help they really needed. You loved them. Sometimes love is complicated. The court hearing for Vanessa happened a week later. I wasn't required to attend, but caseworker Barnes suggested it might be helpful. So I sat in the back of the Multnomah County Courthouse, watching my sister stand before Judge Patterson. Vanessa had cleaned up for the hearing. Hair washed, makeup minimal, wearing a modest dress I'd never seen before. She looked small and vulnerable, exactly the image she needed to project. Kevin wasn't there. My mother sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The caseworker presented her findings. Unsafe living conditions. Inadequate supervision. Multiple adults in and out of the home. Evidence of substance abuse, though not by Vanessa directly. Concerns about the children's emotional and physical well-being. Then it was Vanessa's turn to speak. She cried, of course. Talked about how much she loved her babies. How she'd made mistakes but was getting help. How she had a new apartment lined up and a job interview next week. How all she wanted was another chance to prove she could be the mother her children deserved. I'd heard this speech before. Different venue, same words. The judge listened impassively, her face giving nothing away. Ms. Harper, I see here that you're currently pregnant with your 6th child. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. But that's exactly why I need my children back. I want this baby to grow up with their siblings. I want to show my kids that I can do better. And how do you plan to care for 6 children when the evidence shows you've been unable to adequately care for 5? Vanessa's lawyer jumped in with explanations about support systems and family help and resources. But I noticed the judge's eyes flickered to me in the back row when family help was mentioned. When the hearing ended, the judge didn't make an immediate ruling. She ordered Vanessa to complete a parenting course, submit to regular drug testing, maintain stable housing, and prove consistent income before reunification could be considered. The children would remain in foster care for a minimum of 6 months with supervised visitation. Vanessa crumbled. My mother rushed to her side. I sat in the back row, feeling simultaneously relieved and devastated. The kids would be safe, but they'd be with strangers. Vanessa might actually have to change, but the cost was her children being taken away. As I stood to leave, Judge Patterson called my name. Ms. Natalie Harper? I approached the bench nervously. Yes, Your Honor. I've read the caseworker's notes about your involvement with these children. She looked at me over her reading glasses. You've been their primary caregiver for several years. Yes, ma'am. And you declined to foster them when given the opportunity. I did. May I ask why? No judgment. I'm simply curious. I took a breath. Because I realized that every time I caught them when they fell, I was preventing anyone from noticing they were falling. I was enabling their mother to avoid the consequences of her choices. And I was sacrificing my entire life in the process. I love those kids more than I can express, but I can't save them by destroying myself. Judge Patterson studied me for a long moment. That's a very mature understanding of a complicated situation. Most family members can't see it that clearly. It took me 5 years and a therapist to see it at all. The judge almost smiled. Well, for what it's worth, I think you made the right decision. Not an easy one, but the right one. Those children need their mother to step up, not their aunt to continue stepping in. As I left the courthouse, my mother caught up with me in the parking lot. She looked older somehow, more fragile than I'd ever seen her. "Are you happy now?" Her voice was bitter. "Your sister is destroyed. Those children are with strangers. All because you couldn't just help a little longer." "Mom, I helped for 5 years. How much longer would have been enough? 6 years? 10? Until Vanessa had 8 kids she couldn't care for? Until I'd completely given up everything I ever wanted for myself? Family sacrifices. No." I stopped walking, turned to face her fully. Family supports each other. Family helps each other. But family shouldn't destroy each other. And that's what was happening. Vanessa was destroying her own life with her choices, and I was destroying mine by trying to fix them. "So you chose yourself over innocent children." "I chose to stop enabling their mother to neglect them." "There's a difference." My mother shook her head. "I don't know who you've become, Natalie. This isn't the daughter I raised. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe the daughter you raised was too willing to sacrifice herself for people who never learned to do the same." I drove home alone, crying so hard I had to pull over twice. But underneath the grief and guilt was something else. Something that felt almost like freedom. For the first time in 5 years, I went home to an empty apartment that was actually mine. No toys scattered across the floor. No children's voices echoing off the walls. No midnight wake-ups. No endless cycle of needs I could never quite meet. Just silence. Just space. Just the possibility of a life that belonged to me. That night, Marcus came over with takeout from my favorite Thai place, the one we used to go to before kids and chaos took over our relationship. We ate on my couch and watched a movie without interruptions. We talked about his work, my work, our hopes for the future. Regular couple things that had become impossible luxuries. Afterward, as we lay in the dark, he asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Do you regret it?" "Every single day." The tears came again. "I feel like the worst person in the world." "You're not." He pulled me closer. "You're someone who finally chose to save herself instead of sinking with everyone else. That doesn't make you a villain. It makes you human." "But what if they hate me? What if Liam and Chloe and Mason and Zoe and Ethan grow up thinking I abandoned them? Or what if they grow up seeing that sometimes people have to set boundaries to survive? What if they learn that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing everything? What if the best thing you ever teach them is that it's okay to choose yourself sometimes?" I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that this crushing guilt would eventually fade. That I'd made the right choice. That choosing my own survival didn't make me a monster. But as I lay there in the dark, listening to Marcus breathe beside me, all I could see were 5 small faces wondering why their aunt had finally done what everyone else in their lives had already done. Why I'd left. The weeks that followed felt like living in 2 different realities simultaneously. In one reality, I was slowly reclaiming my life. Sleeping through the night. Arriving at work on time. Actually completing projects with the creativity and attention they deserved. Having dinner with Marcus without checking my phone every 5 minutes. Going to the gym. Reading books. Existing as a person instead of a collection of other people's needs. In the other reality, I was a monster. My phone filled with messages from family members telling me exactly that. Aunt Lorraine sent long texts about how disappointed she was, how she'd always thought I was the responsible one, how those children needed me and I'd turned my back on them. Uncle Gerald left voicemails asking how I could sleep at night knowing my nieces and nephews were with strangers. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had opinions about my choices, all of them negative. My mother stopped speaking to me entirely. She'd taken Vanessa's side completely, which shouldn't have surprised me but somehow still hurt. She was helping Vanessa with the reunification requirements, attending her parenting classes, providing documentation of stable family support. She was doing for Vanessa exactly what I'd been doing for years, and I wondered how long it would take before she burned out too. The only family member who didn't condemn me was my father's sister, Aunt Lorraine's sister-in-law Carol, who called 3 weeks after the court hearing. She was a woman I'd seen maybe twice a year at family gatherings, someone on the periphery of our lives. I heard what happened. Her voice was calm, neutral. "I wanted to check on you." "I'm fine." The automatic response. "Natalie, I'm going to tell you something nobody else in this family will. You did the right thing." I felt tears spring to my eyes immediately. It doesn't feel right. It never does. Walking away from people you love never feels good, even when it's necessary. But I watched my sister enable her daughter for 20 years, and you know what happened? Her daughter never learned to stand on her own. Never had to. And when my sister died, her daughter fell apart because she'd never developed the skills to survive without someone catching her. I didn't know that story. Nobody had ever told me. Because nobody wants to admit that sometimes love means stepping back. Your mother won't see it. She can't. She's too invested in the idea that mothers sacrifice everything, that family means erasing yourself. But you saw the truth. You saw that you were drowning, and you chose to swim. That takes courage. After we hung up, I cried for an hour. Not from sadness exactly, but from the sheer relief of having one person, just one, tell me I wasn't evil for choosing myself. Work started improving. Helen noticed immediately. In our weekly one-on-one, she commented on the change. "You seem different. More present. I'm working on some personal things. It's getting better. I can see that." She smiled. "The Henderson campaign you submitted last week was some of your best work. Sharp, creative, exactly what we needed. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." The Henderson campaign had been my first project in months where I'd actually had the mental space to be creative. Where I wasn't staying up until 2 in the morning helping with homework or dealing with kid emergencies. Where I could focus on the work itself instead of constantly juggling everyone else's needs. Denise took me out for celebratory drinks after we landed the Henderson account. We sat at a wine bar in the Pearl District, the kind of place I used to frequent before my life became consumed by someone else's chaos. "You look like yourself again." She raised her glass. "I missed this version of you." "What version?" "The one who had opinions and energy and ambition. The one who wasn't just surviving." We talked about work, about her dating life, about normal things that had nothing to do with children or family drama. And somewhere in the middle of the conversation, I realized I was laughing. Actually laughing, not the tired polite laughter I'd been offering for years, but genuine joy. On the drive home, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Miss Harper?" "This is Ms. Rodriguez from Riverside Elementary." My stomach immediately tensed. "Is everything okay?" "I'm calling because Liam asked his foster mother if he could call you. She wanted to check with me first, and I wanted to check with you. Would you be open to a phone call from him?" The question caught me completely off guard. "Yes. Of course. Anytime." She gave me the foster mother's number and asked me to reach out when I was ready. I sat in my parked car outside my apartment building for 20 minutes, staring at the number, terrified of what Liam might say. Would he hate me? Would he ask why I'd abandoned them? Would he beg me to come get them? I called the next evening after talking it through with Dr. Aldridge. The foster mother, a woman named Teresa, answered warmly. "Liam's been asking about you constantly. He's worried you're mad at him." "Mad at him? Why would I be mad at him?" "Kids internalize things. He thinks you stopped coming around because he did something wrong. Because he was too much trouble." The words shattered something inside me. "Can I talk to him?" "Hold on." I heard shuffling, then Teresa's voice in the background saying, "Liam, your Aunt Natalie is on the phone." Then breathing, hesitant and quiet. "Liam?" "Sweetheart, it's me. Auntie Nat?" His voice was so small. "Are you mad at me?" "Oh baby, no. I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from sobbing. I'm not mad at you at all. Not even a little bit. Then why don't you come get us? We've been good. I promise we've been really good. How did I explain this to a 9-year-old? How did I make him understand something I barely understood myself? Liam, you haven't done anything wrong. None of you have. You're wonderful kids, and I love you so much. But you know how sometimes grown-ups have to make really hard decisions even when they don't want to? Silence. Your mom needs to learn how to take care of you guys. And I was making that harder by always doing it for her. So now the people you're staying with, they're helping make sure you're safe while your mom learns what she needs to learn. Are you coming back? Not to get us, just to visit? I would love to visit you guys. If that's okay with Teresa and the caseworker, I would love that so much. We talked for 15 more minutes. He told me about his new school, how it was weird but okay. How the foster home had a dog named Biscuit. How Chloe was being dramatic about everything as usual. How Mason missed me but was making friends. How Zoe kept asking for me at bedtime. How Ethan had learned to say more words. Before we hung up, he said something that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Auntie Nat? I'm glad you're not so tired anymore. You always looked really tired. Out of the mouths of children. The truth we don't want to hear. Caseworker Barnes approved supervised visits. Once a month, I could see all 5 kids at a neutral location with Teresa present. The first visit was at a park in southeast Portland, one of those places with elaborate play structures and families everywhere. I saw them before they saw me. All 5 of them, holding Teresa's hands or walking close to her, and they looked okay. Not broken. Not traumatized. Just okay. Chloe spotted me first and screamed my name, breaking into a run. Then they were all running, all 5 of them crashing into me with the force of small hurricanes. I knelt down and let them swarm me, breathing in the smell of their hair, feeling their small bodies pressed against mine. We stayed like that for a long moment, tangled together, and I felt the guilt threaten to consume me. But then Zoe pulled back and said, Auntie Nat, did you see the swings? They're really high. Come push me. And just like that, it was playtime. I spent 2 hours at that park, pushing swings and playing tag and sitting at picnic tables while they told me about their new lives. Teresa watched from a respectful distance, giving us space but staying close enough to supervise. They seemed happy. Not perfectly happy, not without struggles, but genuinely okay. Liam was less anxious. Chloe was still dramatic but more playful. Mason showed me a picture he'd drawn at school. Zoe demonstrated a song she'd learned. Ethan toddled around exploring everything with the fearless curiosity of toddlers. At the end of the visit, saying goodbye was hard but not devastating. They hugged me tight but didn't beg me to take them home. They waved from Teresa's van as she drove away, and I stood in that parking lot feeling something I hadn't expected. Relief mixed with love. They were going to be okay. Meanwhile, Vanessa's life was unraveling in ways I could only hear about secondhand. She'd moved in with my mother because she couldn't afford the new apartment she'd promised the judge. Kevin had disappeared completely, no forwarding information, just gone. The job interview she'd mentioned never materialized, or maybe she never went. The parenting classes were happening, but according to Uncle Gerald who called to update me, she was barely passing. She's trying. His voice was defensive, as if I'd argued. She shows up to the classes. She takes the drug tests. Showing up isn't the same as changing. I kept my voice neutral. What more do you want from her? I want her to actually want to be a mother. Not just want the children back so she can feel like a victim less. There's a difference. You become very hard, Natalie. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just finally seeing clearly. The real test came 3 months after the kids were placed in foster care. Vanessa was granted supervised visitation, 2 hours every other week at a family services center. My mother called me the night before her first visit, her voice tight with anxiety. She's terrified they won't want to see her. She's been crying for hours. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy. Part of me wanted to offer comfort, maybe even go with her for support. But the newer, healthier part of me recognized this pattern. The drama. The crisis. The expectation that I would drop everything to manage someone else's emotions. Mom, this is between Vanessa and her kids. I can't fix this for her. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm asking you to care. I do care. But caring doesn't mean sacrificing myself anymore. She hung up on me. It was becoming a pattern. I heard about the visit from caseworker Barnes, who called a few days later. How did it go? I asked, hating that I cared, unable to stop caring. Complicated. The kids were excited to see her initially. But within the first hour, old patterns emerged. She spent most of the time on her phone. Made promises about taking them to the zoo next time. Tried to position herself as the victim of the system rather than taking accountability. How did the kids react? Liam shut down. Chloe got clingy. Mason acted out. The younger two were mostly okay, but they're also too young to fully understand everything. Miss Harper, I need to ask you something directly. Okay. Do you believe your sister is capable of safely parenting these children? The question hung there. Heavy. Consequential. Honest answer required. I want to believe she is. I chose my words carefully. I want to believe that losing them will be the wake-up call she needs. But based on the past 9 years of watching her make the same choices over and over? No. I don't think she's capable unless something fundamentally changes in her, and I don't know if she has it in her to make that change. That's what I'm seeing too. There was rustling of papers on her end. We're likely looking at long-term foster care with possible termination of parental rights if things don't improve significantly. And the kids will stay with Teresa? For now. She's willing to do long-term placement if needed. They're settling in well. After we hung up, I sat with that information. Termination of parental rights. Permanent placement. These kids might never go back to Vanessa. They might grow up calling Teresa Mom. And I would become Aunt Natalie, who visits once a month, who sends birthday presents, who loves them from a distance. It should have felt like failure. Instead, it felt like reality. Work continued to improve. Helen promoted me to executive director, a position I'd been working toward before everything fell apart. The promotion came with a significant raise, more responsibility, and a corner office that felt like a symbol of the life I was rebuilding. Marcus and I started talking about moving in together. Not rushing it, but actually discussing it as a real possibility instead of a distant dream. We looked at apartments with 2 bedrooms, proper kitchens, spaces that felt like adult homes instead of emergency shelters. One evening, as we sat on the floor of an empty apartment we were considering, Marcus asked the question I'd been waiting for. Are you ready for this? For us to really build something together? I think so. I looked around the space, imagining our furniture, our life. For the first time in years, I can actually picture a future that's mine. Not yours and Vanessa's kids. Not mine and anyone else's chaos. Just mine. Ours. He kissed me then, and it felt like sealing a promise. A commitment to choosing the life we wanted instead of the life everyone else expected. But guilt has a way of creeping back in. It happened 4 months after the kids went into foster care. I was at work, in the middle of a strategy meeting, when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. The message contained a single photo. Vanessa, visibly pregnant, probably 6 or 7 months along based on the size of her belly. Standing outside what looked like a clinic or social services office. The text below read, "This is on you." I excused myself from the meeting, went to the bathroom, and stared at that photo until it blurred. Baby number 6. Growing inside my sister while babies 1 through 5 lived with someone else. And somehow, according to the text, this was my fault. I called Dr. Aldridge from the bathroom stall. She's blaming me for the pregnancy. Is she pregnant with the baby or are you? Obviously she is, but then how is it your fault? Because if I'd kept helping, maybe she wouldn't be in this situation. Maybe she wouldn't have turned to whatever relationship produced this pregnancy. Maybe, Natalie, stop. Dr. Aldridge's voice was firm. You did not get your sister pregnant. You did not make her choices for her. You are not responsible for the consequences of her decisions. Say it back to me. I'm not responsible for her choices. Again. I'm not responsible for her choices. Do you believe it? I'm trying to. That night, I showed Marcus the photo. He looked at it for a long time, then set my phone down carefully. What do you want to do? Nothing. The word felt powerful. I want to do absolutely nothing. This is her life. Her choice. Her consequence. Are you sure? No. But I'm learning that being sure isn't always necessary. Sometimes you just have to choose and live with the uncertainty. The guilt didn't disappear. It probably never would. But it was getting quieter. Easier to live with. Less consuming. I kept seeing the kids once a month. Watching them grow and change and become more themselves. Liam joined a robotics club at school. Chloe discovered she loved theater. Mason was reading chapter books. Zoe had opinions about everything. Ethan was walking and talking and becoming a tiny person with a huge personality. They called Teresa Mama now, though they still called me Aunt Natalie. And that felt right somehow. They deserved a mama who was there every day. I could be the aunt who loved them, who visited, who sent care packages and remembered birthdays and showed up for school plays when I could. At the 6-month review hearing, Judge Patterson asked me to provide a statement. I stood in that courtroom again, this time not as someone drowning but as someone who'd learned to swim. Your Honor, I love my nieces and nephews. I always will. But I've come to understand that loving them doesn't mean enabling their mother's inability to care for them. For years, I made it possible for my sister to avoid the consequences of her choices. I thought I was helping. I've learned I was actually preventing necessary change. The judge listened carefully. And your recommendation for permanent placement? I believe they're thriving with Teresa. I believe they need stability more than they need to keep waiting for their mother to become someone she may never be capable of being. Vanessa was in the courtroom. She didn't look at me. My mother sat beside her, shooting me looks of pure venom. Uncle Gerald shook his head in disgust. But I stood there, steady, and told the truth. Judge Patterson didn't make a final ruling that day. She extended the foster placement for another 6 months, gave Vanessa more time to complete her requirements, and scheduled another review. But I could see the writing on the wall. Unless something dramatically changed, those kids weren't going back. After the hearing, my mother confronted me in the hallway. You just condemned your sister's children to grow up without their family. I condemned them to grow up with stability and safety and a parent who actually shows up. If that's not Vanessa, then that's not Vanessa. How can you be so cold? I'm not cold. I'm finally warm. For the first time in years, I'm not freezing to death trying to keep everyone else comfortable. She walked away without another word. I watched her go, feeling sad but not guilty. Sad for what our relationship had become. Sad that she couldn't see what I was finally seeing. But not guilty. Not anymore. That night, Marcus picked me up from the courthouse. We drove to the coast, an impromptu trip with no planning. We walked on the beach as the sun set, and I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed. Peace. Real, genuine, uncomplicated peace. I'm proud of you. Marcus took my hand. I know that was hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Still is, every day. But you're doing it. You're choosing yourself. You're choosing us. You're choosing a future. We stood there watching the waves, and I thought about all the versions of myself I'd been. The responsible sister. The overwhelmed aunt. The drowning woman. And now, Finally, just Natalie. Flawed and uncertain but learning. Growing. Surviving. The kids would be okay. Vanessa would have to figure out her own life. My mother would eventually have to accept my choices or not. And I would keep moving forward, one day at a time, building a life that belonged to me. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined. It wasn't clean or perfect or without pain. But it was honest. It was real. And for the first time in years, it was mine. A year passed. Then another. Time moved differently when you weren't constantly in crisis mode. Days had rhythm again. Seasons changed with significance instead of just blurring together in an endless stream of emergencies and exhaustion. Marcus and I moved into that apartment we'd looked at, the one with 2 bedrooms and a proper kitchen and windows that let in actual sunlight. We painted the walls colors we chose together. We bought furniture that wasn't from thrift stores or assembled in a panic. We hosted dinner parties with friends where conversations weren't interrupted by children's needs. We traveled to Seattle for a long weekend, then to San Francisco, then to places we'd only dreamed about when my life belonged to everyone but me. We got engaged on a Tuesday evening in March, nothing elaborate or Instagram-worthy. Just Marcus cooking dinner in our kitchen, turning to me while stirring pasta sauce, and saying I want to spend my life with you. The real you. The one I'm finally getting to know. The ring came later, but that moment, that simple declaration, felt like the real proposal. Work flourished. The creative director position I'd wanted for years finally opened up, and Helen didn't hesitate to recommend me. I led campaigns that won industry recognition. I mentored junior staff members. I traveled to conferences and gave presentations about brand strategy and digital marketing. I became the professional I'd always had the potential to be but never had the space to become. Dr. Aldridge and I moved to monthly sessions, then every other month. Not because I was cured or fixed, but because I'd learned the tools I needed. How to recognize when I was slipping into old patterns. How to set boundaries without drowning in guilt. How to choose myself without feeling selfish. The work was ongoing, probably lifelong, but it was manageable now. The kids remained with Teresa. The 1-year review became a 2-year review. Vanessa completed her parenting classes but failed to maintain stable housing or employment. She had the baby, a girl she named Lily, and for about 3 months, it seemed like maybe this time would be different. She attended more visits. She seemed more focused. My mother reported cautious optimism. Then Lily ended up in the emergency room at 4 months old with failure to thrive. Severely underweight. Signs of neglect. And just like that, baby number 6 joined her siblings in foster care. Teresa, bless her enormous heart, took Lily too. All 6 children under one roof with a woman who'd somehow found the capacity to love children who weren't hers while maintaining boundaries I'd never learned to set. I visited every month without fail. Watching 6 kids grow up in snapshots. Liam turned 12 and started asking questions about his mom that I didn't know how to answer honestly without destroying what little hope he might still carry. Chloe was 10 and had landed the lead in her school's production of Annie, which felt cosmically appropriate. Mason was 8 and obsessed with dinosaurs, rattling off Latin names with casual expertise. Zoe was 6 and still dramatic but in the delightful way of children who feel safe enough to express big emotions. Ethan was 4 and called me Auntie Nat Nat, which melted my heart every time. And Lily, who I'd met for the first time when she was 7 months old, was now 2 and learning that the world could be gentle. I brought birthday presents and attended school events when my schedule allowed. I was the aunt who showed up sometimes, who loved them consistently from a distance, who sent care packages and made video calls. I was not their mother. Teresa was their mother. And slowly, painfully, I made peace with that. Vanessa and I didn't speak for almost 2 years. Complete silence. My mother served as the reluctant intermediary when necessary, though she still hadn't forgiven me for what she viewed as abandonment. Uncle Gerald had essentially written me off as selfish and cold. Aunt Lorraine tried to maintain neutral ground but mostly avoided me at family gatherings I rarely attended anymore. The silence broke on a Wednesday afternoon when my phone rang with Vanessa's number. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering, my heart pounding with old familiar anxiety. Natalie? Her voice sounded different. Smaller. Less defensive. I'm here. Can we talk? In person? I need to tell you something. We met at a coffee shop in Northeast Portland, neutral territory far from either of our homes. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. She looked older. Thinner. Tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. I sat down across from her without ordering anything. I wasn't planning to stay long. Thank you for coming. She didn't meet my eyes. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. What do you want to say? She took a breath that shook slightly. I've been going to therapy. Real therapy, not just the court-ordered parenting classes. A therapist who specializes in attachment and childhood trauma and all the things that made me who I am. Okay. And I've been learning things about myself. Hard things. She finally looked up, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Genuine self-awareness. I've been learning that I never actually wanted to be a mother. Not really. I wanted to be wanted. I wanted someone to need me. I wanted to create relationships where I was the center of someone's world because I never felt like the center of anyone's world growing up. I didn't know what to say to that, so I stayed quiet. Every time I got pregnant, I told myself this time would be different. This time I'd feel that maternal instinct everyone talks about. This time I'd know how to be the mother these babies deserved. She was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. But it never came. That feeling never came. And instead of admitting that, instead of getting help or making different choices, I just kept trying. Kept getting pregnant thinking eventually I'd figure it out. Vanessa, let me finish. Please. Her voice was urgent now. You were right about everything. About me using the kids to get attention. About me never actually stepping up to parent them. About me relying on you to do the hard parts while I kept the title of mother. You were right, and I hated you for seeing it when I couldn't admit it to myself. I felt something in my chest loosening. Not forgiveness exactly. Not yet. But understanding. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm signing over my parental rights. Voluntarily. Teresa wants to adopt all 6 of them, and I'm going to let her. She stopped, waiting for my reaction. I thought I'd feel triumph in this moment. Vindication. Some sense of I told you so. Instead, I felt sad. Sad for those 6 kids who'd never have the mother they deserved. Sad for my sister who'd spent her whole life chasing something she couldn't find. Sad for all the years of chaos that had led to this quiet surrender. How do you feel about that decision? Devastated. Relieved. Terrified. Like I'm finally being honest for the first time in my life. She wiped her eyes. Those kids deserve a mother who wants to be their mother, not someone who's performing motherhood because that's what she's supposed to want. Teresa loves them. Really loves them. Not because they make her feel needed, but because they're worth loving. What about Lily? Especially Lily. Vanessa's voice broke. I looked at her in the hospital after she was born, and I felt nothing. Just emptiness where love was supposed to be. And I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I couldn't keep creating human beings I'm not capable of loving the way they deserve. We sat in that coffee shop for 2 hours. She told me about her therapy, about unpacking her relationship with our mother, about recognizing patterns of seeking validation through chaos. She apologized, not with the empty apologies I'd heard hundreds of times before, but with real accountability. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Didn't make excuses. Just owned the damage she'd done. I'm not ready to forgive you yet. I needed her to know that. You put me through hell for years. You used my love as a weapon. You let me drown while you kept making choices that created more waves. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally see it. All of it. And I'm sorry. We left separately. I sat in my car for a long time afterward, processing everything. Part of me wanted to hate her, to hold on to the anger that had sustained me through the hardest parts. But mostly I just felt exhausted. Exhausted by the waste of it all. The years that couldn't be reclaimed. The childhoods that had been sacrificed to her inability to be what she'd needed to be. I called Dr. Aldridge from the parking lot. She answered even though it wasn't our scheduled session time. Vanessa's giving them up. For adoption. Voluntarily. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Isn't that terrible? 6 kids are about to lose their biological mother permanently, and I don't know how to feel about it. Why is that terrible? Dr. Aldridge's voice was gentle. You spent years carrying the weight of their welfare. You made impossible choices to protect them and yourself. Now their mother is making a choice that prioritizes their well-being over her ego. That's growth, even if it's painful growth. Should I feel happy? You should feel whatever you feel. There's no right emotion for this situation. It's okay to feel relief and sadness and anger and hope all at the same time. The adoption process took another 6 months. Legal paperwork, home studies, court appearances. Teresa navigated it all with the same calm competence she brought to everything. The kids, surprisingly, handled it better than anyone expected. They'd been calling her mama for over a year anyway. Making it official just felt like acknowledging what was already true. The day the adoption was finalized, Teresa invited me to a small celebration at her home. It was the first time I'd been inside, and I was struck by how normal it was. Not Instagram perfect, but lived in and loved. Toys scattered across the living room. Artwork taped to the refrigerator. A calendar on the wall filled with color-coded schedules for 6 different kids. The organized chaos of a real family. The kids swarmed me when I arrived, excited to show me their rooms, their toys, their new kitten named Pancake. They were so beautifully normal. So settled. So okay in ways they'd never been okay before. Teresa pulled me aside while the kids were distracted with cake. I wanted to thank you for not fighting me on this adoption. I know it probably hurt, watching someone else become their legal mother. It did. I was surprised by how easily the honesty came. But they love you. Really love you. And you love them in a way that's healthy and sustainable. I couldn't give them that. I can barely manage my own life most days. You gave them something important too. You showed them that it's okay to set boundaries. That loving someone doesn't mean destroying yourself. Liam talks about you all the time, you know. About how you chose to take care of yourself, and how that was a brave thing to do. I felt tears burning. He said that? He did. Teresa smiled. He's figuring out that love can look different than what he thought. That sometimes people have to make hard choices. That adults aren't perfect and that's okay. Before I left that evening, Liam pulled me aside. He was 12 now, taller than I expected, his voice starting to change. He looked so much like the man he'd become someday. Auntie Nat, can I ask you something? Anything, sweetheart. Do you wish you'd kept us? Back when CPS took us the first time? The question caught me completely off guard. I thought about lying, about giving him the answer that would make him feel better. But he deserved honesty. Part of me will always wish I could have been everything you needed. But Liam, I was drowning. If I'd kept trying to be your mom when I wasn't equipped to be anyone's mom, I would have failed you worse than if I'd never tried at all. He nodded slowly, processing. Mom Teresa says you made the grown-up choice. That you knew your limits. She's right. It's taken me a long time to believe that, but she's right. I'm glad you're happy now. He said it simply, like it was just a fact. You smile more when you visit. Before, you always looked sad. Out of the mouths of 12-year-olds. The truth we don't want to hear but desperately need to. Marcus and I got married in September, 2.5 years after I'd finally chosen myself. Small ceremony, immediate family only, which meant his large, boisterous clan and exactly 3 people from mine. My father's sister Carol, who'd been the only one to support my choices from the beginning. And surprisingly, my mother. She'd called 6 months before the wedding, her voice stiff and formal. "I heard you're getting married." "I am. I'd like to come. If you'll have me." The conversation that followed was halting and uncomfortable. She didn't apologize for the years of judgment. Didn't admit she'd been wrong to enable Vanessa. But she did say something that felt like progress. "I've been watching you rebuild your life. Watching you succeed at work and find happiness with Marcus. And I've been watching Vanessa finally get help. Real help." She paused. "You were right about the enabling. I didn't want to see it, but you were right. It wasn't the full apology I might have wanted, but it was something." So she came to the wedding and cried during the ceremony and told Marcus he was lucky to have me. It felt like a beginning of something different, if not entirely healed. The kids came too, all 6 of them dressed up and excited. Liam was my unofficial ring bearer even though he was way too old for the role. Chloe insisted on reading a poem she'd written about love and family. Mason handed out programs with the seriousness of a tiny executive. Zoe scattered flower petals with theatrical flair. Ethan toddled down the aisle holding Teresa's hand. And Lily, now 3 years old, slept through the entire ceremony in Teresa's arms. During the reception, I watched them play with Marcus's nieces and nephews, just kids at a wedding, and felt something shift inside me. They were okay. They were thriving. And I was okay. I was thriving. We'd all survived the chaos and come out changed but whole. Vanessa didn't come to the wedding. We'd started rebuilding a relationship, slowly and carefully, but we weren't there yet. Maybe we'd never be there. But we were talking, which was more than I'd thought possible 2 years ago. She was in a different therapy program now, working through her own trauma and patterns. She had a job at a call center, nothing glamorous but steady. She was on birth control for the first time in her adult life, taking active steps to prevent pregnancy number 7. She saw her kids once a month in supervised visits, and according to Teresa, she was actually present during those visits. Not perfect, but trying. We met for coffee occasionally, careful conversations where we slowly learned to know each other as adults rather than just as responsible sister and chaotic sister. She told me about her therapy breakthroughs. I told her about work projects and wedding planning. We didn't talk about the years of pain. Not yet. Maybe eventually, but not yet. One evening, about a year after my wedding, she asked me something I'd been waiting for. "Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Really forgive me, not just tolerate me?" "I don't know." The honesty felt important. "I'm working on it. But Vanessa, you have to understand what those years cost me. My career suffered. My relationship almost ended. My mental health was destroyed. I lost myself completely trying to save you and your kids. I know. I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I'm just asking if you think it's possible someday. Maybe. If you keep doing the work. If you keep being honest. If you keep showing up as this version of yourself instead of the one who used everyone around her." "Fair enough." She looked down at her coffee. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Of the life you've built. Of choosing yourself when everyone told you not to." Coming from her, unexpectedly, those words meant something. 3 years after the kids went into foster care, I stood in my office overlooking downtown Portland. Creative director. Successful campaigns under my belt. A team of talented people I got to mentor and lead. A career I'd built through actual hard work and creativity instead of just surviving each day. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Dinner at 7? I'm making that pasta thing you love." "Perfect. Love you. Love you too. And hey, I was thinking. Maybe it's time we talked about what comes next for us. I knew what he meant. We'd been married for over a year. My life was stable. We had space, both literally and emotionally. The question of kids, our own kids, had started coming up in gentle ways. The idea terrified me and excited me in equal measure. After everything I'd been through, could I actually be a parent? Could I love a child without drowning in it? Could I maintain boundaries while still being present? Dr. Aldridge and I had been talking about it in recent sessions. Working through my fears. Examining the difference between what I'd done for Vanessa's kids and what healthy parenting looked like. I wasn't ready yet, but I was getting closer to ready. Let's talk tonight, I replied. That evening, over pasta in our kitchen with golden light streaming through the windows, Marcus and I talked about the future. About what we wanted. About fears and hopes and possibilities. About becoming parents someday, when I was ready, if I was ever ready. And for the first time, I could imagine it. Not the chaos and drowning of before, but something different. A child who was ours, chosen and wanted. A family built on intention rather than obligation. A life that included children but wasn't consumed by them. I'm still scared, I admitted to Marcus. Scared I'll repeat the patterns. Scared I'll lose myself again. But now you know what that feels like. He took my hand. Now you know your limits. Now you have tools and boundaries and support. You're not that drowning woman anymore. He was right. I wasn't. I'd clawed my way to shore and learned to swim and rebuilt myself into someone stronger. Not perfect, not without scars, but whole. The following month, I visited the kids for Liam's 13th birthday party. Teresa had organized a big celebration at a local arcade, and I watched 13-year-old Liam laugh with friends while his 5 siblings ran wild through the games. He looked so happy. So normal. So beautifully, ordinarily okay. Before I left, he hugged me tight. Thanks for coming, Auntie Nat wouldn't miss it, kiddo. How does it feel to be 13? Pretty good. He grinned. Hey, Mom Teresa told me you and Uncle Marcus might have a baby someday. Is that true? The casual way he called Teresa Mom didn't sting anymore. Maybe. We're thinking about it. That's cool. You'd be a good mom. Not like before when you were trying to be our mom and you were too stressed. But like, a real mom to your own kid. You'd be good at that. From the kid who'd apologized for being trouble, who'd carried guilt that never belonged to him, this felt like absolution. Like permission. Like he was telling me it was okay to move forward without carrying the weight of those years forever. I think I'd like to try. I said it out loud for the first time. Someday, when I'm ready, I think I'd like to try. Later that night, lying in bed next to Marcus, I thought about all the versions of myself I'd been. The responsible daughter who never questioned expectations. The overwhelmed aunt who sacrificed everything. The drowning woman who finally chose to save herself. The villain in everyone else's story who became the hero of her own. And now, maybe, the woman who could be a mother without losing herself in the process. My phone lit up with a text from Vanessa. I saw on Mom's Facebook that it was Liam's birthday. How was the party? It was good. He's happy. Good. I'm glad. After a pause. Thank you for going. For still being in their lives even though you don't have to be. They're good kids. They deserve to have as many people love them as possible. Yeah. They do. Another pause. Natalie? I'm really trying. With therapy and everything. I want you to know that. I know you are. Keep trying. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something. An acknowledgement that people could change, that growth was possible even after terrible damage, that moving forward didn't require forgetting the past but learning to carry it differently. I put my phone down and looked around our bedroom. At the photos on the dresser of our wedding day. At the books stacked on both nightstands because we finally had time to read again. At the space we'd created that belonged to us. At the life I'd fought so hard to reclaim. Marcus stirred beside me, not quite awake. "You okay?" "Yeah." I smiled in the darkness. "I'm okay." And I was. Not perfectly. Not without moments of guilt or sadness or wondering what if. But okay in a real, sustainable, honest way. I'd learned that you could love people without saving them. That setting boundaries didn't make you selfish. That choosing yourself wasn't abandonment, it was survival. That sometimes the most loving thing you could do was step back and let people face the consequences of their choices. I'd learned that family wasn't just about who you were born to, but who showed up when it mattered. That being responsible didn't mean carrying everyone else's burdens. That you could be good and kind and loving while still protecting yourself. 6 kids were growing up healthy and loved with a mother who chose them intentionally. My sister was finally getting real help. My mother and I were slowly, carefully rebuilding something that resembled a relationship. And I was living a life that felt like mine. It hadn't been easy. It still wasn't easy. Some family members would probably never forgive me for choosing myself. Some people would always see me as the villain who abandoned those kids. But I'd learned to live with that. Learned that other people's opinions of my choices didn't have to define my worth. I thought about that moment in Target 3.5 years ago when I'd gotten the text about pregnancy number 6. How I'd stood there frozen, knowing something had to change. How I'd made a choice that felt impossible but necessary. If I could go back and talk to that version of myself, drowning under the weight of everyone else's needs, I'd tell her what I'd learned. That it gets better. Not easier necessarily, but better. That choosing yourself doesn't make you a monster. That boundaries aren't cruelty. That you can't pour from an empty cup. That sometimes love means saying no. I'd tell her she was braver than she knew. That the hardest thing she'd ever do would also be the thing that saved her. That letting go would hurt more than holding on, but it would also finally let her breathe. I'd tell her that 3 years from now, she'd lie in bed next to someone who loved her, in an apartment that felt like home, with a career she was proud of and a future she could actually imagine. That she'd visit those kids and see them thriving. That she'd have real conversations with her sister about healing. That she'd finally understand what peace felt like. And I'd tell her that it was worth it. Every hard choice. Every moment of guilt. Every accusation of selfishness. All of it worth it to get here. Because here, finally, she was free. I fell asleep that night with Marcus's arm around me, with my phone silent beside me, with no children sleeping on mattresses on my floor, with no crises waiting to explode in the morning. Just quiet. Just peace. Just a life that belonged to me. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Years from now, maybe I'd have children of my own. Maybe I'd learn to parent in a healthy way, with boundaries and balance and support. Maybe Liam and Chloe and Mason and Zoe and Ethan and Lily would be the cool older cousins who taught my kids things. Maybe Vanessa would be an aunt who sent birthday cards and showed up for holidays. Maybe my mother would be a grandmother who'd learned from her mistakes. Or maybe none of that would happen. Maybe the future would look completely different than anything I could imagine right now. But that was okay. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. I couldn't control other people's choices. I couldn't fix other people's problems. I couldn't save people who didn't want to be saved. But I could save myself. I could choose my own life. I could set boundaries and maintain them. I could love people from a healthy distance. I could be kind without sacrificing myself. And that knowledge, that understanding, that hard-won wisdom was mine to keep. Nobody could take it from me. Nobody could guilt me out of it. Nobody could convince me that protecting myself was selfish. I'd learned to swim. And I was never drowning again. So what would you have done? If your sister kept getting pregnant while you raised her kids, if your family called you selfish for setting boundaries, if everyone told you that love meant sacrifice without limits, would you have kept drowning? Or would you have chosen to save yourself? I chose myself. And I'd make that choice again, every single time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.